The Not So Great Outdoors contains stories of a graphic nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
The outdoors are great, except when they're not.
Welcome to the Not So Great Outdoors. We're your guides. I'm Seb.
And I'm Piff, and this week we're doing the Tham Luang Cave Rescue.
Oh, God. Cave rescues scare me half to death.
So, also known as the Thai Boys Cave
Oh,
Rescue.
I followed this case. Oh, this will be, guys, mark it down, in history, in SGO pod history. This is the first episode that I actually know some detail about. Not a lot, but some.
I'm so pumped.
I'm excited.
So, happy New Year's Eve, everybody. The day everyone looks forward to the next year and what things they hope to accomplish. For me, I just hope that I get to adventure again next year because, wow, what a year 2020 has been.
Yeah. All of the things I hope I can do are nowhere near as cool as that. So, I'm just going to leave it.
You hope you can do things.
I hope I can do things. I would
can...
love to go on a family vacation because, like, my parents started talking about all of us going on a family vacation like the year I got married, and we haven't been able to make it work. And so I just really, and this year we were going to be able to do it, and now
the plan is to do it our 1 year anniversary week. So.
Would be cool.
And I'm like free vacation plus low key like a honeymoon. I'm not mad about it.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
and with me, I'll be there with you, your best friend, one of.
I have many best friends.
Sorry, Becca and Megan, who are listening. Sorry. One of. We
They're
can all
come
share.
For you.
They're not going to come for me. They love me.
If you claim you're the only one, the others will come for you.
Oh, yeah. I'm not the only, for sure. That's why I, like, backpedaled so quickly. I was like, I'm not.
One of them. One of them.
One of. Sorry. It's just easier to say your best friend instead of one of your best friends. That's so much.
So to end the year, I thought I would do something that really captured the world's attention only 2 years ago, the rescue of the Thai soccer team from a flooded cave. And I literally remember like reading all of the updates and the speculations and the ideas of people.
Yeah. What year was this?
2018.
Okay. I worked at the caves during this time.
Yeah. So
No, you
would have been here.
No, I was here, but what was I thinking? Something related to caves. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yes, I remember following that, like just being like, did they get out? Are they alive?
Remember basically me and Becca used to work together at the bank, and our boss was like, so what do you think? And we were like, they're dead. Like we weren't even like, we had no belief that they would have survived.
I had hope that they would survive, but I did not hold my breath. Because I remember at that point I worked for my most previous job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they all knew that I had worked at a state park and that I knew stories about caves flooding because we would have to close our cave tours, for certain ones because of flooding. Like, it is very dangerous. And people have died at the state park where I worked because a cave flooded and they went in there when they weren't supposed to. So, like, yeah, it's very dangerous. Underground is not a place where you want to be when there's going to be heavy rainfall.
So before we start, big shout out to National Geographic and writer Joel K. Bourne Jr., who did a fantastic deep dive. See what I did there? Of this rescue.
I didn't catch it until you said, see what I did there.
And also BBC News. And there was not an author on the article that I used. As always, all of our links will be in the blog. But those are my two like big main ones that did a really good job of covering. So National Geographic and BBC.
Really quick, less than 30-second hot take from Sav. Okay. I hate it when publications don't give the people who wrote the piece the credit. There you go.
I agree.
That's it.
So the cave in question is lots of Thai words. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this. So I think it's Tham Luang Cave Non.
What are we going to call it?
Well, we're going to call it the cave.
The cave? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I was like, are we going to call it the Tom Cave? Like, what are we going to call it?
Yeah.
The
cave. That translates to, quote, the great cave and water source of the Sleeping Lady Mountain, end quote.
Water source. Keep that in mind. Because a lot of rivers, creeks, like a lot of water flows
we'll get to it.
Out of caves. I know, but I'm just like nerding out because I actually know stuff about this episode.
So, and some places just list its name as Tham Nam Lang. It's the fourth largest cave system in Thailand.
Wow, I didn't know that.
10 kilometers or 6.2 miles long. So now, for some cave-like comparisons for our Kentucky folk, because these are all going to be Kentucky caves.
Cool!
Mammoth Cave. So this cave, 4th longest in Thailand, 6 miles-ish.
So 6 miles is the cave where the soccer team was.
Yes.
Okay.
Mammoth Cave, which is one of the largest cave systems that we know about, in not like reality, but it's pretty large, and most people have heard of it. It's 400 miles long.
Yeah. So, by comparison, this is a relatively smaller cave.
Yes.
By that comparison, for sure.
Yes. Sloan's Valley Cave System, which is also a very popular Kentucky wild cave to go visit, is about 16 miles.
Okay.
Pine Hill Cave in Mount Vernon is 5.3 miles. And Bat Cave at Carter Cave State Resort Park is about 2 miles.
Yeah.
So,
but it feels so much bigger, but yeah.
Yeah, so just to give everybody who knows what those caves are any reference points.
Yeah. I'm glad you threw in the Bat Cave one there.
Yeah.
That helps me a lot because, like, I feel like Bat is way bigger than that, but it's really, I mean, it has offshoots that are dead end, but.
Yeah, well, and again, this is like.
Straight through.
It's the passages. Mm-hmm. So it's the mapped passages. It's about 2 miles. Or, Pine Hill is about 6 miles. So Pine Hill, if you've been there, we take a lot of scouts there. Jeremiah's been there. We can take you guys there. But that's about a similarly sized cave. So it's big enough to get lost, but it's not so big. It's not like Mammoth,
Yeah. It's not so big that you'll get lost with no hope of ever finding your way out.
Exactly. So we do have a partial map of the cave on the drive, and it's important to note that during the rainy season, starting in July, the cave is extremely prone to flooding. According to BBC, it can flood up to 5 meters or 16 feet, and the safest time to visit the cave is between November and April. There is a similar cave with a similar story, although it's not as highly publicized, that happened in Kentucky. And I know somebody who was trapped there, so.
Who was trapped?
Mm-hmm.
Do I know somebody who
No.
was trapped there? Oh, okay. I don't know who it is. Sorry, I'm struggling to get the drive to cooperate with me. Okay.
So, and like I said, it's a partial map. I tried to find the original cave survey, and a lot of places were like, it's in this publication, but then I couldn't get that publication digitally.
Yeah.
Well, no, I could
digitally
borrow it from a library in Thailand.
Oh. Yeah, not gonna work.
That doesn't help me.
Mm-mm. Stretches between base camp and so. Oh, okay, this map is neat because it's like tells you where things were happening too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and so we'll get to more about that, momentarily. More about the cave. So Tham Luang is a resurgence cave, meaning that there is an underground river which comes to the surface via this cave. Typically, this means there's a large river passage in the cave and that the entrance has water flowing out of it. It has a large entrance passageway, which is common for resurgence caves, making it super easy to spot. According to Thailand's Top 20, a guide to the longest and deepest caves in Thailand, in the river passage, quote, the roof heights have been estimated at never less than 10 meters, usually over 20 meters, and sometimes reaching 80 to 100 meters, end quote. Of course, this is saying nothing about all of the nooks and crannies that caves are full of, but just some reference information.
Okay.
So I will also take this time to point out that caving is super fun and active and interesting as a hobby. It's also very dangerous, and you should get information about caves before going into them. Unfortunately, a lot of that knowledge is communal and not written down, which is why joining and supporting your local grotto is important. In this instance, it does appear that most community members were aware of the risks of going into this cave during wet weather, but teenagers do dumb shit.
Mm-hmm.
For
the people who may not know, tell us what a grotto is.
A grotto is a chapter of the National Speleological Society. They exist all over the United States. If you live somewhere else, they're probably called something different. But they're essentially like adult caving clubs. So they'll do conservation as well as trips, surveys, research, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So join your local grotto. If you want to know more, go to caves.org. So, are you ready?
I am ready.
I was really excited to do this, but also really nervous because, I wanted to do a good job.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll do a great job.
So, here we go. So, this story begins on June 23rd, 2018. It was one of the boys. Also, so I'm not going to name any of them. One, because most of these children were minors when this happened.
Yes.
Two, I don't speak Thai.
Yeah.
So I can't pronounce their names, and that just seems rude.
Fair.
So there's that.
Fair. But yes, they were mostly for sure minors too.
Yeah. I do have a photo of the whole team from the day that this all happened, like while they're outside. So we have a couple of photos of them.
That the rescue happened, or that the bad thing happened?
Both.
Oh, okay.
So but there's a photo of them like outside on their bikes before they go into the cave. It's called like Boys Before.
Okay. Yeah, they were all so young.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more. We'll get to it.
We'll get to it. So on June 23rd, it was one of the boys' 17th birthdays.
Really?
And yes.
Some of the, I guess there's just a wide range of ages within this group. Because I was like,
is.
they all look so young to me.
Yeah. Well, also 17-year-olds look way younger now that you're not 17. So there's that. So like any 17-year-olds would want, he spent the day with his friends, the members of the Wild Boar soccer team. They had football practice, soccer practice for us Americans. Mm-hmm. And then they headed up to the mountain to explore the cave. They had a habit of heading into the dark with their flashlights to explore or do teenage initiation rituals. It seems that this cave was someplace that they felt comfortable and confident.
Which they definitely should not have.
But I can also see, and there's a point in this cave up until where like a lot of locals and tourists will tour and go explore, and they were past that point.
Yeah.
So, you go up enough times and you're like, oh, I wonder if we could go a little further.
Yeah.
So their plan was just to mess around in the cave for about an hour and head home for birthday cake, basically.
Yeah.
They only had themselves and flashlights. Oh, God. Or, as BBC says, torches.
Torches.
Which are flashlights.
Yeah. It just makes me sick just because, like, caving really is so dangerous, and, like, being in a cave unprepared is so dangerous, and it's just, I don't even like going to caves where I'm very familiar, like, without, backups and even to walk, like, I'm not talking, like, crawling around, I'm talking, like, just to go look for literally 10 minutes, I'm like, okay, but do we have a flashlight? Like, I'm just kind of like, okay, but, it just stresses me out.
Mm-hmm. So they got about 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles into the cave, and they started experiencing flash flooding. So the reason that flash flooding happens is when it rains, the water of the surface drains into the earth, and this water typically is what will form caves. And it also uses the cave because it's a big open area under the surface. So the water will drain into there, and then it moves out of the cave. That's why there's the river going out of the cave. So once the levels start to rise when it's flash flooding, and it doesn't mean it's raining right now, it probably means it rained yesterday.
Yeah, because that's the moment when, and also, like, okay, so when we see flash flooding on the surface, that's when the ground cannot hold
any more water,
or the water is coming down so fast that it doesn't have time to be absorbed. And so when you're underground and you experience flash flooding, think of it basically as you turned the faucet on. Like, it just can't hold it any further, but it has the opening below, so it comes into it, which is terrifying. And I've seen water just, like, come out of the ceiling for whatever reason, and it's terrifying.
And again, like, caves in Kentucky can flash flood. Caves, there are tons of caves that can flash flood, and it's why it's important that you know
what you're
about that information before you enter a cave. There's a specific cave that I know of that, like, you can only enter it after Memorial Day, before Labor Day.
Yeah,
that's
within
the
dry
only
season.
Like, safe time to visit.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's one at Carter Caves that is, like, I think it's only by permit now, but, like, was permanently closed for a long time because it was notorious to flood. It was dangerous.
So when the flash flooding started to happen, the 12 members of the soccer team and their coach managed to get onto a rock shelf above the water.
And I remember, I'm so sorry. I just remember one of the things that ticked me off the most is, like, you have your coach with you, and they know, like you said, the people in the community knew the dangers around this cave, but they also were familiar with it. But it's like, the dangers of this cave. Like, why are you taking your whole team 2 miles into the cave?
Well, one, it wasn't like the coach's idea. Two, the coach wasn't like a proper
Let's go in the
adult.
cave. Okay, I guess that's also
He was in his early 20s.
Yeah.
He was their coach.
Yeah.
He was barely older than them.
Yeah. Okay. Or than a lot of them.
Yeah. So, and that's something that I didn't know before because I
didn't
didn't
really fully know that.
And I was like, why would you do this? And it was like, well, one, it wasn't his idea. Two, he was the same age as them. He still didn't have a fully developed frontal lobe.
Yeah. And when you get a bunch of kids together and they're all like, yeah, let's all go in the cave, and they start running that direction, you're not going to stop them.
Yeah. Well,
not that old anyway.
Yeah. And again, they've done this tons of times.
Yeah.
And been fine. So they get to this rock shelf. They actually, at one point, they dug deeper into the wall so that they had like more space and like to get warmer. Yeah. Because they wanted to be like more inside of it. Mm-hmm. And at this point on the surface, panic is like taking over their loved ones.
Yeah, because they can't find them. They don't know where they are.
The birthday boy never made it home for his birthday.
Yeah,
he didn't. He had this SpongeBob cake.
Aww.
That they had gotten. I saw a picture of it. 17.
But he was 17. He had a SpongeBob cake. I just don't know any 17-year-olds who would have liked SpongeBob at that time. But hey, cool.
Listen,
cool.
Like what you like as long as you like
love it. Yeah.
So, and apparently, like, the parents start to worry, and, like, the other parents are like, our kids aren't home either. Mm-hmm. And so they had discussed in some sort of group chat going into the cave. And so it was either their parents or the authorities, depending on where you look, heads up to the cave. And they find the bikes, they find backpacks, they find soccer cleats, no boys. Mm-hmm. And so almost immediately, like, the call goes out for help.
To rescue. Yeah. Because at that point, that gives you enough reasonable, like, doubt to be like,
they said they were going there. Their stuff's there. They're in this cave.
Yeah. Which is good because sometimes cave rescues don't get started until way later after this. So that is one thing that was a real saving grace, I think, for this situation is because the cave rescue got kicked off. Yeah. Because cave rescues are hard to get everybody gathered. Mm-hmm. Like setting up a cave rescue. Yeah, setting up a cave rescue takes a long time. So
well, and the other thing is like you should always have a call out when you go caving, any type of caving, any level of caving, so that you say, if I'm not out by this time, this is the cave I'm in. This is when we were planning to where we were planning to go. This is when we're planning to come out.
Yeah. I feel like a call out or something like that is especially important for caving, but also I think it's just good if for hiking. It's good for like any of those things where it could be potentially dangerous. Like
especially if you're alone.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So the
outdoor
first
safety.
Yes, that's why you're here.
That's why you're here.
So the first group of experienced people called in were the Thai Navy SEALs, basically.
Yep. Which is probably a good call.
While the Navy is great at underwater things and rescue operations, nothing is quite like a cave. Mm-mm. And they had no idea where the boys were at inside. Yeah. So
which is why you think that'd be a great call, but you're like,
You call who you can.
Yeah.
So a few initial attempts were made, and again, regular diving is not like cave diving. Mm-mm. And international cave divers were brought in. There aren't a lot of cavers in the world. There are even less knowledgeable cave divers, and there are even less
who are rescue certified
that are skilled enough to be part of a rescue operation. Exactly. Yeah. So specifically, 3 British cave divers flew to Thailand to assist with the rescue. There were also U.S. Air Force rescue specialists, cave divers from Belgium, Australia, and Scandinavia. And the first of these international volunteers arrived on June 28th.
And the boys went missing
June 23rd.
Okay.
So by the time cave divers could get there,
5 days later.
5 days. They had been underground.
Yeah. Which is why there is so little doubt that they would survive this.
Yeah.
Because they're in an emergency situation. Like, it's not just like the human body can survive for however long without food and water, but it's also like they are in an emergency, a stressful situation. Your body cannot take that for very long. Like, especially young bodies.
Yes, exactly. And so while people were assembling and teams were being brought in, the boys were trapped. Mm-hmm. And luckily, because of where they were, they obviously had plenty of access to water.
Yeah.
And their coach was a former monk. So he taught them to meditate to conserve energy.
I forgot that part.
Yeah. So he was like, we have to conserve energy. We have to stay calm. We have to conserve air, because they didn't know how much
how much
air they would have.
Yeah, because weren't they in like a pocket? Like they weren't.
Yeah.
It wasn't like flowing, moving water. It was a pocket.
It was like literally a pocket. There was nowhere else for them to go, and so they were slowing their breathing. They were trying. He was teaching them to stay calm in this situation.
Yeah.
If their coach had not been with them, I don't have confidence that this would have turned out the way that it did.
Yeah, I agree. And weren't they able at one point, once they could find where they weren't they able to bring them supplies at some point?
Yeah, and we'll get to it.
Yeah.
So, and they had their flashlights so they could see until the batteries of the flashlight died. Again, carry 3 sources of light when you're underground.
Yes.
One of them should not require batteries.
Yeah.
So I always carry glow sticks as well as flashlights.
Yeah.
So the waters inside of the cave were rough. From new rain, from old rain finally making it to the cave. And the visibility in the cave water was described by one of the cave divers as, quote, like driving in fog with your headlights on, end quote. The boys had been trapped at this point for a week, and there was still no idea of where they were or how they would get to them.
Which is amazing their air lasted that long, too, since there were so many of them trapped in one location.
Yeah, and so part of... We'll get to more about like what their air situation was.
Yeah.
But the limestone in that area was really porous.
Oh, good.
Which was helpful.
Yeah.
To keep bringing in fresh air.
Yeah.
It was still, they didn't have great air quality when they were there, but it was better than it could have been.
It was better than nothing. Yeah.
Yes. So from a U.S. caver who wrote a CNN piece about this rescue that I know. Anmar. Do you know Anmar?
I think I know the name.
He does cave rescue certs in this area.
That's cool. But I don't know him, but I think I've heard his name.
Yeah, he wrote this article. So, quote, the basic tenet of cave flooding rescue is this. Wait. Either the people are alive and safe somewhere inside, in which case taking risk only serves to place rescuers in danger, or they have already perished, in which case there is zero reason to place rescuers in danger, end quote. Yeah. He would go on in the same article to say, quote, in the Thailand case, though, the waiting may well not be enough, end quote, because the water was still rising. So as they're there, it was June, end of June, so it's just the start of the rainy season, basically. And the rain was, like, unrelenting.
Yeah.
So luckily, during all of this, they're bringing in cave divers. They're setting up rescue stations. They're trying to, like, figure out where the boys could be. The divers are, like, doing their best, but there's only so much they can do. They're trying to pump water out, but at first they were only getting, like, a couple inches a day. They did get better at that, but you can only pump out so much when more is just constantly coming.
Yeah.
So they luckily had also been surveying the locals. While engineers attempted to pump water out of the cave, a valiant but fruitless effort, they found out where the boys were likely planning on going on their trip.
Yep.
So one of the members of the soccer team had elected not to go into that cave that day for some reason, and was able to tell rescuers that they were planning to go to Pattaya Beach, a rocky area deep inside the cave past where most casual tourists go. So they had a location, and if you look at the map of the cave, you go in and it forks. So just knowing which side of that fork was on was invaluable information. They're planning to go this direction. So with that information, a cave map from the 90s, and all of the training that cave divers and Navy SEALs had to offer, they started attempting the dives. For 4 days, the cave For 4 days, the cave rescuers moved inside with no luck. On the surface, people were attempting to find a second entrance, or maybe figure out below the surface where the boys might be. And if they could figure out where they were underground from the surface, maybe they could drill down to them. But caves are finicky, and that could have resulted in a collapse or increased flooding.
Yeah.
And they still had no idea where they were.
That could have caused more damage than done any good.
Yeah, and also, even if they could somehow figure out where underground they were in reference to the surface, it was a literal jungle. How are they going to get machinery up there to drill?
Yeah. Also, I just feel like drilling down's not worth the... It's not worth the risk if there's still a chance that they're alive.
Exactly. And, like, you don't know where they are.
Yeah, you don't know exactly where they are. And also, you don't know if they're alive or not. So then it's like, well, if they're alive and we drill and it collapses, then we kill them.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just kind of like,
So, finally, 10 days after they went missing, divers were pushing leads as far as they could go. They were running lower on air than they should have been. And they had reached Pattaya Beach, but hadn't found the team there. So they kept going on that same passage. And eventually, they popped up into the 9th air pocket. Every time they came to an air pocket, they would remove their masks and smell and yell and try to see if there were people in there.
I almost asked you why would they smell, but never mind. I know the answer to that. I don't need. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So they get to the 9th air pocket and they remove their masks and they smelt something foul. From National Geographic, quote, "We thought it was decomposing bodies," end quote. But by some miracle, it was 13 alive young soccer players. And we do have the photo from when they were first found because the divers had cameras on them. So we have that. There's actually a whole video, and you can find it on the internet, of them first being found.
Yeah. And I've watched an interview of one of the divers, like who, we'll get to it, but who was involved heavily in this whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the foul smell, I mean, they're still boys, they're still human beings, they still have to go to the bathroom.
And they've been trapped for 10 days.
Yep. So not only is it their waste, but it's also just them, teenage boys. Teenage boys, after a shower, give them about an hour, they're going to stink anyway. So,
yes.
You know, like, yeah.
But even once they were found, the trouble was nowhere near over.
Yeah.
They had been found.
They knew how to get to them.
Yeah. Bring them food. They actually had, one of the cave divers was also a doctor, because cave diving is always a hobby, unfortunately. So you have to have your day job. His was a doctor. So they had a doctor in there to stay with them and tend to the boys and make sure that they were getting nutrition that their bodies could process. Because when you go 10 days without eating,
you can't just
eat
just slam a burger because your body's not going to take it. That is actually, okay, sorry, really random, sad random fact. And it's not a fun fact at all. It's a very sad random fact. Many of the Jews that were liberated from concentration camps died shortly thereafter because of overindulgence, because they would try to eat like a full meal and they had been emaciated so badly that
their bodies couldn't handle it,
and that's how they died.
I don't have any problem believing that.
Yeah.
So they hadn't eaten, they were weak, they probably hadn't seen light in a couple of days at this point. One
of the boys in the picture is like shielding his face.
Yeah, because it's so bright and you've just been sitting in basically darkness.
Because those flashlights, I don't care if you only used one at a time. They're
bright.
I mean, they're bright, but like if you only used one at a time, they're probably dead by now.
Oh yeah, by 10 days, yes.
Because you got to imagine they weren't fresh batteries whenever they got in there.
And also, none of the boys knew how to swim.
Oh, that's a problem.
So how would they get them out?
Yeah. So I figured they got them out the way that they got them out just because it was safer than them swimming, but that also makes sense. Like that does pose a challenge.
So the public at large had a lot of thoughts about how to get them out. Some of them had merit, and some of them were just plain ridiculous to anyone who knows anything about caves. So,
which not a lot of the public does, but still.
Some plans I've already mentioned, like drilling down to the boys or finding a second entrance maybe. But at this point, those options were seeming grim. They had been searching for 10 days. They hadn't found anything. Another idea was just to try to send food into them for 6 months until the water subsided.
No, you can't leave them in there for 6 months. Absolutely not. Let's put you underground for 6 months.
But they're trying to do whatever is going to keep them alive.
I mean, yes.
They're all 13 alive right now. How can we keep them alive?
We need to keep them alive, so yes, give them food, but please don't make it last 6 months, surely.
So, my favorite ridiculous plan,
ridiculous
putting it in
rescue
air quotes,
idea?
Yes.
Ridiculous rescue?
Came from a certain tech startup giant who I will not name because his followers are ruthless, but I will describe his plan so they'll probably find me anyway. Schmelon Schmusk considers himself...
Really? You didn't even try. You could have just said, this guy thinks,
I know,
blah, blah,
but
blah.
it was
but you
too
didn't
fun.
even, his followers really are ruthless. You're going to bring chaos onto our podcast.
Well...
You didn't even try. I am so appalled by that.
So this man considers himself...
It's too late now.
The best at everything and the most knowledgeable. He's so smart. So he came up with a metal pod of sorts that they could put them in. And like it's a little mini sub and they could just drive it out of the cave.
Yeah, but if you look at that map, you can see why that's going to be a problem.
So while this metal contraption did move underwater, he didn't take into account how narrow caves are, not to mention a 2-foot pinch point that turned while being narrow.
Yep.
So like
it's this point. The narrow flooded passage.
So
you have to go straight down and come straight up.
There's this video that he put out. He was like, look at my pod. Look at these divers maneuvering it through a narrow passage. It's like 4 feet wide.
I'm sorry.
At least.
Very few cave passages are 4 feet wide.
Well, and there's literally a 2-foot passage.
Yeah.
So can you show me a 2-foot rocky passage that turns?
Yeah.
Sir, that wouldn't work.
2 feet in width or 2 feet in height or both?
I do not know. I think it was width.
I think you're right because I think it was still a little bit taller than. But if that pinch point, you have to go under.
Yeah, it's a U-shaped point.
Yeah. Think like the U-bend of a sink.
Mm-hmm.
Except flip it.
And like, people were like, well, why aren't they just using that? And I'm like, because it wouldn't work.
It would get you like
all
halfway
of the
there.
Cave divers, because he left it in Thailand. He was like, just in case, it's called the Wild Boar after the team, because he's like trying to act like he knows what to do. And I'm like, okay, but all the cave divers are like, yeah, this is dumb. This won't work in this situation. Like, I'm sure it'll work in some other situation.
Yeah.
This is not an appropriate
solution. Yeah. But, I mean, you got to hand it to, what did you say? Shmilan Shmusk. He has really brilliant ideas about some things, but this ain't one of them. It's a brilliant idea, and it's cool that it worked, but like it's not going to work in this situation.
It wouldn't work for the purpose that you tried to make it work for. So,
no. But it's cool to make a little mini sub. That's kind of cool.
So also, back to the actual situation at hand.
Yeah.
So they were like, well, maybe we'll just send them in food for 6 months. But then the oxygen in the chamber was dropping, and nobody really knew how much longer they had left. So normal oxygen percentage in our air is about 21%. In the chamber, it was down to 15%.
Yeah, time's ticking at that point.
So, and there's a chart that I don't have. It's in the BBC article that says, like, what happens to your body at different stages of, like, oxygen percentage. It's not good.
Eventually, you'll pass out, but you will die.
Yeah, but before that, you get, like...
lightheaded, you
get
nauseous.
Dizzy, and, like, you're drunk. So there's a lot of things that can happen, and it's not good.
Yeah, and then put that in a cave. You know, if they're dizzy and they can't stay upright and they're in a cave, like that could just lead to more health issues
and
too.
None of them know how to swim,
and
so
physical problems. Yeah, so if they fall over and then they roll into the water.
So the rescuers did not have a lot of time. And to be honest, most of them didn't expect to find the boys alive in the first place. It's well known in cave diving that you are more likely to be on a body recovery than an actual rescue.
You're on a recovery instead of a rescue.
Yeah. And that's, again, when Becca and I, like, anybody would ask us at work, we're like, they're probably dead. Like, there's no way they're still alive. And then once they were alive, we were like, some of them will die coming out. If they dive them out, some of them will die. And we also said, and I'll get to this in a second, but we're like, and if they dive them out, they're gonna fully sedate them. Like, they're gonna completely knock them out.
They have to.
No way those boys are diving themselves out. They will die.
Yeah. Like, I could imagine maybe the older ones could have, but it just makes sense to just sedate all of them.
Well, but again, none of them knew how to swim. None of them knew how to dive.
That's true. If they knew how to swim, then maybe. But that's a hard maybe, even if they were a good swimmer.
So, while a plan was hashed out, equipment was gathered, supplies and bolts were added to the route. So they had, like, all these ropes and stuff that they rigged up to, like, haul them through. And the divers were going in over and over to refill air, food, and supplies. And on July 6th, the only fatality of this endeavor occurred. Saman Gunan, a former Navy Thai SEAL diver, was taking air tanks into the cave with a dive buddy. He ran out of air and lost consciousness and then lost his life. We do have a photo of him Mm-hmm. And I just want to take a minute to talk about him. I feel like the world got so caught up in the fact that the boys were okay and they all got out and stuff that they forget that, like,
we lost someone.
We lost somebody. We lost a rescuer. Yeah. We lost a volunteer. We lost a helper.
Yeah.
And once again, I will remind you that anytime you need a rescue, the people that are coming to help you are at an elevated risk level. Adventure safely.
Yeah. Don't put yourself in danger. You won't put other people in danger.
Exactly.
But obviously accidents happen. Like,
accidents happen.
I'm not fussing at the people who fall by accident and get hurt and need to be rescued.
Sometimes like,
don't do something stupid. Yeah.
But adventure safely.
Yeah. And smart. Be wise.
So Saman was 38 years old at the time of his death. He was praised as a hero, not just because of how he died, but because he was the type of person who was just always helping. From BBC, quote, Saman once said, "We never know when we're going to die, so we need to cherish every day," end quote. His fellow Navy SEALs went to Facebook to mourn, saying, quote, "He was a very capable SEAL and a triathlete who liked adventure sports. Although he resigned from the unit, he still loved and had a good connection with all the SEALs." And according to his wife, he loved helping others, doing charity work, and getting things done. She also said, as if she was still talking to her late husband, quote, "You are the hero in my heart. You always were and always will be," end quote.
We're both tearing up. That's just awful. Like, I hate it. Obviously, it's awful to lose anyone, but, like, such a good-hearted person, like, such a kind person. And he died trying to save the lives of others. Like, I don't know. There's just no greater love than he who lays down his life for a friend. That's all I have to say for that.
Yeah. And
especially he who lays down his life for somebody he doesn't even know.
Yeah. And he it just seems like he was that kind of person. Like, he was the type of person to give somebody the coat off his back. Like, he was just one of those genuinely good people that you're lucky if you get to meet.
Yeah.
So his death really shook the community. Not only like some of the other volunteers were his friends, they were his SEAL buddies.
Yeah.
But it also cast doubt.
Like, are they going to be able to get them out alive?
Exactly. Many of them, before this death, a lot of lay people couldn't imagine how complicated this type of rescue is, how risky it is.
But they just really put it into perspective.
Oh, these people are professionals. They know what they're doing.
Oh, they're just going to dive in and dive out. Like, it's not that straightforward.
Exactly. And one of the mothers of a trapped boy said, quote, "The Navy SEAL had practiced for so long and was so strong, but also died. How about a boy who has never dived before?"
Yeah.
End quote. And so, like...
And can't swim.
Yeah, so... And again, you don't really realize, and I think that people overestimate what they think they know. You don't realize what a cave is like until you've been there. I have no idea what cave diving is like. I know that it's the most dangerous type of diving. So there is so much that, like, people didn't even realize how dangerous all these people that were helping, how much danger they were in. So... But there was, like, no time to waste.
No. Yeah.
And
you had, like, inaction at this point would be more dangerous than action.
Exactly. Like, they're running out of air. They need out.
Yeah.
And so the next day, the extraction of the boys would begin. So from National Geographic, quote, "In the end, the British team decided there was only one option. Sedate the boys to unconsciousness, put them in sealed full face masks, and then bind their arms behind them with zip ties. So if they did wake up in panic en route, they wouldn't kill themselves or their rescuers."
And also, while they're sedated, their arms aren't floating out, like getting hurt or snagged. Or
the divers built special harnesses for the boys with handles on their backs so they could swim them out like human duffel bags, end quote.
So they were holding them. I was wondering how they did that.
Yeah. So...
I'm like, do they strap them to them? Do they tie a
well, and
rope
they
around
couldn't. They
their foot?
had to be able to, like, maneuver it.
Yeah,
like
they
a
had
package.
to be able to, like,
yeah,
because you couldn't yank them behind you, and you wouldn't have very good luck pushing them ahead of you, like pushing them, unless you had like a like something to hang on to.
And I have this a little bit later, but so each boy had two divers. Moving each boy out, so that you had the person in front of him, person behind, and they were, like, literally
working
maneuvering
together.
it. Yeah.
Especially in that pinch point.
So there are several times in these different articles where the divers are like, honestly, I expected some of them to die. One of them is like, I figured the first couple would die and then we'd figure it out and get the rest out safely. But, like, we're saying this so simply, like, yeah, they were just going to sedate them and move them through, but it was
you
not.
don't know. It's how much sedation do you give them to keep them out long enough? What about the younger ones? What about the older ones? Like, there are so many variables.
Yeah, and it's so complicated to just dive in a cave, and the visibility was crap. They were trying to pump water out, but it kept raining. The next day, the reason they did this is because the rain finally let up, and they're like, this is our window. We have to go now.
We have to do it, yeah. Did they get them all out in one day?
No.
Or was it days? I thought it was days. Okay.
So, and like, I cannot impress upon anyone who's never been underground, like, or never been involved in a rescue, never been trained in cave rescue, how technical and complex this rescue was. I do highly recommend the CNN article by Anmar, because he is a cave rescue instructor. He's been involved in thousands of cave rescues. Just reading his words and how difficult it is, it kind of like makes you, it puts it into perspective. It makes you think.
Yeah. I mean, I could not even begin to wrap my head around how to make something like this happen. So, like, props to them, because, geez. Because, like, a cave rescue by itself is difficult. Then you add diving. Then it becomes, like, infinitely more difficult.
Exactly. So, some Thai officials will say that the boys were just given anti-anxiety medication to relax while being transported, that they weren't fully out. But one, National Geographic says they were given Xanax and ketamine, and I believe them. Out. And two, just because the government says something doesn't always mean it's true, especially if they're trying to cover their butts on, like, a bunch of teenagers.
Yeah. Although it's not...
People were outraged that they were going to knock out these boys.
Why? I'm sorry. We're trying to keep them safe. We're trying to keep them alive here, people.
People don't understand that. I literally saw an article that was like, people were like in disbelief that they would even consider knocking them out.
You know whose opinion counts in this?
The rescuers.
The rescuers and the parents. Now, a parent could have made the decision to be like, no, you're not knocking my kid out, and then it's on them. Yeah, if they're like, fine, then we're going to put your kid in this mask and we're going to try to get him through, but they're going to freak out and they're probably going to have a heart attack and die.
Well, and like, if you've never been diving, if you can't swim, how are you going to be calm in that situation? Yes. How are you going to breathe normally? How are you not going to run out of air?
Yes. And I'm sorry, but this is not a public health issue. This is those boys and those rescuers and those families issue. Yeah. This is not a public health issue. The government should not have gotten involved in any way.
Well, the government was coordinating the rescue.
Well, I mean, okay, fine. Yes, in that, I just mean in the, like, the intricacies of, like, what has to happen in order for this to... You should just listen to the experts and be like, okay.
Well, and the government never stopped them from doing it. They just said, like, for public perspective.
Yeah. Which is fair. As a person who's worked in PR, that's fair. But, like... Yeah.
But also, the
public needs to shut up.
Yeah, well, and they literally would have killed people. Like, more people would have died if they hadn't sedated them.
Yes.
I fully believe
more
that.
Divers would have died. Like,
exactly.
Because if a kid starts flailing, they can knock your mask off. They can disconnect your tank.
You can lose the guideline.
You can lose, then you're stuck. You're blind.
You have no idea where you are.
Yeah.
So, like I said before, each boy was accompanied by 2 divers and hauled out of the cave. Only the cave divers, like the official cave divers, would move the boys through the most difficult section, but then they would be passed off to more rescuers. It took the coordination of about 100 volunteers and personnel just underground to get them out of the cave.
Holy crap. I mean, it's a 6-mile long cave, so I mean, yeah, and they're going...
They were about 4 miles in.
Yeah, I was going to say, they were going at least 4 miles, They definitely were going a really long distance, so yeah, I mean...
Yeah, and there were only, like, a handful of divers who were experienced to be the cave divers that were diving them through the difficult sections. So 3 days later, all of the boys were out of the cave and their coach.
That's awesome. And so they would they only move one boy at a time?
Only one boy would be underwater at a time.
Okay. But what about who went out last?
The doctor.
Well, I mean, yes. I just mean of the team.
The coach.
Okay. But at least they weren't really alone. Like, the doctor was also a diver. He knows the situation. He knows how to get out safely. Like,
the diver dove himself out.
I'm just thinking, like, Like, I'm like the last, like, kid to be out. Like,
Yeah.
just sitting there, it just makes me sad. But at least they weren't alone.
So the boys would come out of the cave and immediately go into a chopper to go to a hospital.
Yeah.
The parents were not told who was out until they were all out. Because they didn't want the parents whose kids hadn't come out yet to be panicking.
Yeah.
Because it takes a long time.
It takes a lot of time
to get them
and,
out.
And, like, you're moving so many people 4 miles. Yeah. Like, think about that.
And you can only move them so fast and it still be safe.
Yeah. Because if you go to, there's just a lot of risk.
Surprising everybody, including me, the boys and their coach all survived.
Yeah. And the rest of the divers. Yeah, that was miraculous. It was nothing short of a miracle that they all survived. Also, like, kudos to the coach. Again, we already talked about this, but kudos to the coach for teaching them how to remain calm and all of that.
Yeah, I think there are so many places in this where if something had been slightly different,
it would have gone...
way more people would have died.
Yeah. Yeah. They would not have lasted 10 days underground if he had not taught them how to regulate their breathing, how to remain calm. And also, if this was a different type of cave, limestone, again, is porous. So it allowed some airflow. Not perfect, but some.
Into that
But,
air
like,
pocket.
if this were sandstone...
Yeah, which is a lot more dense.
Yeah. Like, nope. Sorry. Like, oh, geez. I just can't. And, like, anytime cave rescues get brought up, I just get stressed out because it's you never know. It's just like when you're adventuring and doing anything. Anything can happen at any time in any adventurous situation. But just, like, cave emergencies are a whole new breed. They're, like, their own world. Underwater caving is really dangerous. That's when you combine, like, diving and caving and
NASA literally uses caves to train astronauts because it's such a foreign environment. Like,
and no matter how many times you go into a cave, I don't always feel 100% comfortable in a cave. I'm comfortable underground. I'm comfortable in caves, but, like, I'm always like, anything can happen. It always still feels so different because it's so different from normal day-to-day life. So, in total, there were more than 7,000 volunteers on the mountain. Oh my goodness.
And this bit about the volunteers is from National Geographic. Quote, some cooked the 20,000 meals a day provided free to the rescue teams. Some ran the pumps or diverted the streams at the top of the cave to keep the water at bay, buying the boys precious time. Engineers, hydrologists, and drilling teams pounded the rocks to pump out groundwater, flooding the rice fields of hundreds of poor Thai rice farmers who lost their crops and asked for no compensation.
Wow.
Taxi drivers shuttled volunteers back and forth from the airport for free. Others did laundry for the rescue teams. It was truly international and community effort, end quote, and end my case.
I didn't know all of that.
Yep.
I mean, I knew there had to be tons of people, like, pulling in and all helping in many different ways, but that's awesome. And that's those farmers, like, livelihood, and they were like, this is for the better of the community and for their lives, it's fine. Wow. It really is a miracle that they survived.
Yeah, I said that they would be dead many times.
You really did. And, I mean, I did not think that they would survive. I really didn't. I thought maybe the older ones, but I didn't think any of the younger ones were going to survive.
Yeah. And the fact that they managed to get them all out safely, I was in shock when it happened. I'm still in shock now.
Yeah.
And
they only lost one life. Like, I hate that they lost any, but, like, only one. Like, that's huge.
Yeah.
And that was, like, a freak, like a really hard thing, because, like, you can run out of air way faster than you think you can.
And like, they were all diving far past where they should normally, because normally
they were all pushing hard.
You do a third there, a third back, a third for reserve, but they were doing, like, half there, half back.
Oh, geez. Because no room for air.
They didn't have the extra air, and they had to pump air into the boys. They had, like, literally an air tube to, like, shove oxygen through the water to where they were. So they were trying to conserve everything they could, and sometimes things happen.
Yeah. Jeez. But yeah, I encourage you guys to look up, like, the interviews with the divers and, like, things like that. There was one.
There's a whole movie
Is there really?
With the divers, yeah, I think. The link's in the blog.
Oh, cool.
National Geographic did it. So I don't know if it's like
Nat Geo.
just the video at the top. I didn't click on it. I just read the article below. So, but I think they have like there was a video at the top of the article.
Cool.
So
there was this one guy, he was a diver, and he was talking about like, you know, he was like, you think like, okay, yeah, they're gonna sedate them so they don't move. That should make things easier, but it actually doesn't, because it's a lot of dead weight that still has oxygen, so they're not sinking, they're floating, they're trying to go every direction you don't want them to go. You have to be very mindful of their heads, because your head's gonna float on its own, and that's why their hands were bound, because like that, and so they didn't thrash around if they woke up.
Yeah,
you know, and like he's like there was just so much. You had to be responsible for yourself, them, and your buddy and your dive partner. You know, like all of you are responsible for everybody. You know, everybody, and it was just a lot.
Well, and they're in the articles I was reading. They said they had to like give them a couple of them ketamine more than once, like while they were diving. Yeah, because they started to wake up. And luckily, ketamine also like scrambles your brain, so none of them have any memory of like getting out of the cave. Yeah,
good. That's
probably that would be traumatic.
That would be traumatic. I wonder if they remember like gearing up for it, but then nothing after that, and like nothing until the hospital. Yeah. Or do you think it wiped out like that recent memory, like right before?
Well, because it just as it scrambles it, so I'm sure that there are like bits,
like flashes.
Yeah, but not. And I didn't get this picture, but there's like a video somewhere of the boys like when they're all in the hospital, because they were in this like big ICU room, and they had isolated them for a couple of weeks because they were worried that maybe they had gotten like an infection from something in the cave, like histo or something.
Yeah, they want to keep them all.
So they wanted to keep them separate. So their parents are like outside this glass window, like waving at them. And they all have like masks on, and I was like, "Hey, 2020 throwback."
We can relate to that.
Yeah. But you can just tell like they're very joyful and they're so happy, like they're out and they're safe.
They're just thankful to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they made it.
They made it. I would be curious to know like where are they now? You know, like what if one of them turns into a SEAL who gets dive certified?
Yeah, I think that would be really cool.
That would be really cool. What if they all did? That'd be wild.
I don't think all of them.
No, or like if some of them did it, like became SEALs and like got dive, or like some like start doing it like as a hobby, and like they were like, this is what saved my life, I want to know more. That's pretty cool. Good story.
Thanks.
Good episode.
Last episode of 2020. I had to go big.
Yeah. Wow. That was pretty cool.
So awesome. I was really nervous to do it because I wanted to do it justice, so I hope that I did.
I think you did.
And shout out to Mox, who told me that I should definitely do this, because I was like floating some ideas, and I was like, do you think that'd be good? And she was like, you have to do it, that'd be such a good episode. So
yeah, shout out to Mox.
I did it.
You did it.
And yeah, and it's so recent, and I feel like everybody's aware of it, you know?
Everybody knows. Yeah, everyone who would be listening to us knows. Yeah. Cool.
Wild.
Well, you guys, hope you're gearing up for the countdown to 2021, and we hope that 2021 brings some great things your way. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for coming back every week. Thank you for your support, and no matter how you may give it. To learn more about ways that you can support the show, visit the link in our Instagram bio or our website, notsogreatoutdoors.com. If you have listener stories, we will be carrying that into the new year if we can, but we can only do that with your help. And so please send us any stories that you have, true crime, paranormal, anything that's just freaky, literally anything. I really, personally, I don't have any limits on this series. What about you? I don't.
Anything that makes you say, oh no.
Oh no. Or maybe that should be the new name.
Oh no.
Oh no. Or no, stories that make you go, oh no.
That rhymes.
I know.
I could get behind that.
Okay. We'll toss that one into the hat. We are still taking suggestions though, so let us know. Leave us a review, follow us, rate us, subscribe, all of the above. If you're interested in becoming a patron, patreon.com/nsgopod. We have several tiers that you can choose from, one of which you get custom merch. At this point, made by our own hands until we figure out a merch deal, something else. Yeah. So, but that's special, right? That's cool. So, and if Patreon's not your thing, you can gift us a glass of wine, and you can check out more about that in the link in our Instagram bio. But we appreciate you guys. Happy New Year. And in the meantime, stay safe out there.
Thanks for watching. Our music is by Purple Planet. Our art and logos are by Catherine Dodds. If you'd like to support us, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/nsgopod. And don't forget to listen on all of your favorite podcasting platforms.